Welcome to the show. That picture you might remember, those of you that are old enough, was Emmett Till in 1955. I happen to have been 14, which was his age at that year, and I remember that vividly, that picture of Emmett Till in the centerfold of Jet magazine. So what we're going to do is take you back to that era of, it seems to be coming back to us. Let's take a videotape, take a look at the videotape of Emmett Till. All right? And we'll be right back at you. Thank you.
And he said, "This is Mr. Bride. I want to talk with you and the boy." And when I opened the door, there was a man standing with a pistol in one hand and a flashlight in the other hand. And he asked me, did I have two boys?
And that's a little flashback of Emmett Till back in the day. I think I did this in, what was it, 2000 or something like that. As you see, my hair is black. I look a little younger. Well, welcome to the show, William A. Rogers.
Tony to my friends.
Tony, and of course, Graham Weatherspoon. The reason why I brought up Emmett Till is that Eric Gardner seems to be the Emmett Till of the 21st century, you know, with all the stuff that's happening. And give us your take on what you experienced as far as the movement is concerned. You see, we're having a rally down in Washington, D.C. with Reverend Sharpton next Saturday.
Well, you know, we were just talking about how sometimes situations create a way that people, there's this old saying, power to the people.
Right.
And sometimes certain things take place that allows for an organizing energy that transcends an individual who is sometimes looked upon, whoever that may be, as initiating that. It becomes more of a concept or energy that many different people, different walks of life, kind of receive at the same time and move on it, such as some of the things that took place in the 60s, based on the Emmett Till concept. So,
well, how do you see it happening?
There is
start of a movement.
Start of a movement. It's a hydra that has many heads, which is a good thing. People have taken it upon themselves in New York, Chicago, L.A., all over the country to stand up against the militarization of the police departments in this country. It's kind of late. They're about 20 years behind the time. But it's good that they are focused. And I'm glad to see young people, students, who are involved here in New York, as we were back in the 60s. Voicing our opinions on the Vietnam War and the things that were going on. And it's very important that multitudinous groups take part. And we're seeing that in this process across the country. It's not Reverend Sharpton, it's not this person, it's that people are collectively, and they finally got it. You don't wait for a leader. You are a leader where you are. Establish yourselves as a group and do what you have to do. And this is what's happening. But keep in mind, that Homeland Security is very much involved. They were meeting with NYPD and other departments around the country to teach them how to squash the demonstrations on Take Back Wall Street.
Way back
so this that was messing with the money.
Right, but this is going to continue because Homeland Security is very much involved in suppressing the will of the people in this country. And people need to be very much aware of where they are in this paradigm, because you are not in the United States of America that existed in the 50s or 60s. You're no longer there. Your rights have been very much constricted. And this is not about black people and the police. This is about all the people in this country at this point. And as you move into this venue, one of the questions they're talking about giving body cameras to the cops. Well, we have cameras on the street corners, and conveniently, when necessary, those cameras don't work.
That's true.
A body camera on a police officer is not going to give you the imagery that you got or can get from a person who's not involved in the incident. The gentleman who photographed the shooting in the synagogue 2 nights ago, that gives you an angle that the police officers could not give you.
What happened in the synagogue?
A man went into the synagogue and stabbed a young student in the head around 1 o'clock in the morning.
I saw that. I saw that video. Yeah, I saw that.
So
yeah, that's right. That's right.
One of the other students was filming it on his phone,
Yeah.
and you could see the officers. They came in,
did
they
it
talked
right.
with, and
They
they did
did
it
it
right.
right.
That's
Yeah.
the kind of picture you want to see.
Yeah.
And the angle, you don't want to see the angle of the cop. You want to see an angle where you see
Right.
the cop and the suspect and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But those officers did it right, and unfortunately, the guy wound up getting killed.
Well, he picked up the knife again.
He picked it up
put
again.
the knife down.
Right. The officer
Did you
holstered
see
his
it?
weapon.
No, I didn't. I read about it, but
Yeah.
it was a mental, which
Right.
is another
Yeah.
issue.
It's
that-
another, but we've seen it before with Gideon Bush in Borough Park when
Right.
he had the hammer, they gunned him down, a white male, Jewish male, with emotional problems. But the officer holstered his weapon, approached the guy, and then the guy ran and grabbed the knife again, and the officer backed up.
Well,
He
that
retreated.
He had host. Yeah,
Right,
that's
and then
right.
they were
That's
moving
what I-
around
yeah.
the room. It is unfortunate.
Yeah,
But that kind of videography is the kind you need, not just
Yeah.
one angle coming from
Well, the
person
cops
who's involved
made
in it.
sense.
Right,
They made sense. They only shot after they have to, and they only shot once.
one shot.
One shot. One shot.
But something that came to me when we were just talking about the movement and what happened in the 60s, and again, to start off, that something created a certain type of movement that many people, a many-headed dragon, as we might say. But it's one thing that's interesting. When the movement started in the 60s, you could hear Rat Brown or Stokely Carmichael on TV, on the news.
Yeah.
But when people started organizing, that stopped. There was no communication between Brooklyn or Manhattan or Brooklyn and Chicago about the things that were going on, such as the Panthers and all of that stuff. You didn't see that.
Yeah.
So there was no thread of knowledge. Now with the internet, there's that thread of knowledge again that allows for everyone to see the same thing at the same time and come to certain conclusions on their own without someone telling them about it, which is another conversation that whenever you find, in my opinion, any request to talk about helping secure the internet, that's a very important thing to do.
Absolutely.
Because I think that may be the next steps, such as when television stopped broadcasting information that allowed for people to see that there was a common situation.
Yeah.
We didn't know that what was happening in Chicago was similar to what was happening in New York after a while, because the Rat Browns, the Stokely Carmichaels, they were no longer in the news.
Right.
So
And
they
it's
had to bring it
convenient.
together.
And it runs straight through today. We've covered the Congo. You don't find anything
That's
about
right.
the slaughter
Nobody's
in the
talking
Congo
about the Congo.
in any American press release.
That's right.
Not CNN, ABC, NBC.
Nobody talks about it.
The British Broadcasting Corporation has been covering it for years, and it's bringing up a wellstorm in Europe, but they're not talking about it here. And it's very...
When you go outside of, the news, you really realize certain things. I think Malcolm said it, that travel broadens the mind.
Definitely.
When you go outside and look at how news is covered, it gives you a better understanding of what's happening here. But I mean, it's not that difficult. With all of the things that's happening in the world, it's kind of funny that 7, 4, 2, and 11, and 5 carry the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's looped. The same thing over and over and over, and they're not giving
Well, you
any
find that most of the stuff that we cover isn't covered in the mainstream media. I've found, we were talking about 9/11 back when 9/11 happened, about being an inside job. People were calling me up saying, aren't you afraid that the CIA
Might come get you. I said, well, my man, here's the CIA. I'm sitting right next to the CIA. I don't have anything to worry about.
Well, yeah.
Right? I had my man here.
But it's, well, people, again, don't feel if too many people start listening, then, you know, I mean, the CIA can turn on the CIA when they need to.
And they have.
Well,
And they have.
we might mention, I was going to bring on a roll in about 9/11 before we get to the Kybalion. I'm talking about all these mental problems that we're having and trying to adjust to being black. Last week I brought up the point that there are about as many ways of being black as there are black people. And each of us face this psychosis in different ways and how we're affected during our lives. Now, at the time of Emmett Till, I was 14, all right? So I was here in New York, 1955. 1955 in New York was heaven for me. I mean, at 14, I went to George Washington High School.
So did I.
You went to George, you know?
I went to George
How old are you?
I'll be 68 in June.
68. I'm 73, so I have 5 years on you. So I got out of there in 58. 58 was a good year. I mean, then 60
And
came.
George Washington was a good school.
All the schools in New York were good in that.
I mean,
Which is interesting, you know,
Well, we
public
had the
schools
prettiest
are
girls.
like private schools at a
Right.
certain point.
Precisely.
But we had the
did.
prettiest girls
You
in
know,
George Washington.
I don't know about that.
We had a reputation.
We
of
couldn't
it.
play basketball like Franklin and Commerce, but
That's right.
Yeah.
But going back to those days when, in the middle of Emmett Till started a whole movement. The the Montgomery bus boycott started right after Emmett Till. I mean, that fall. Emmett Till happened in August, I think, was August. And the boycott started in December, and ran a whole year or so.
381 days.
381 days, right? But we didn't understand what was happening down there. Our mental outlook on integration was quite different than Money, Mississippi, or Alabama. Montgomery. It was completely different. I didn't understand what the hell was going on. I couldn't understand why people were sitting in the sun getting suntans. You go to Coney Island, everybody's laying in the sun, and yet certain places I couldn't go in New York. And that's all I do is show me someplace I couldn't go. That's exactly where I went. I get dressed, because I worked downtown in the early 50s. So I was used to going everywhere. As a messenger, as 11, 12, 13, 14, up to 18, I worked downtown.
well, there's a difference between overt and covert racism.
Yeah.
And in the North, a lot of times, most of the times, at least in my situation, coming in contact with a white person, they were trying to either sell something, or it was a reason for them not to be overtly racist, because that wasn't,
They're trying to get
the
your
culture.
money, or
Right.
trying to get you to do something.
But the it's all social programming. I mean, even George Wallace, a lot of people don't know, George Wallace, when he first started in his career, he was branding blacks and poor whites together until he realized that he could get poor whites to give him money and do anything as long as he made them seem that they were superior.
Is that his story?
And, and then once he started to understand that, he could, he had a following, he had a movement, which is how life is. People, I think, you can call it opportunism, but, there's certain things that happen at certain times, and those times you are, whoever you are, are put into a position to create that type of change. I don't think that it's going back into, I guess, the Hermetic thought pattern is that all things happen for a reason, all things have a purpose, and everybody has a part in that's greater than the part in which you believe that you are. Some people think that they are the slice, but there's a pie.
That's right.
Well, out of anything I ever read, I always thought the Kybalion was the key to curing any black psychosis that you develop from racism.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily black, because again, the whole idea of gender, is one of the principles. Talk about, there are no, or dualism. There are no separations in anything.
Right.
There's just the way the vibration goes. So even in race, there's really race or temperature is the best way. You have a thermometer. Hot and cold. It's one pole which has different types, or is one entity that has different poles, and the vibration will allow for it to either be hot or cold. But it's a very thin line when hot goes into cold, cold goes into hot, and it's based on opinion. Same with anything else in life, which is part of these teachings. Whatever you look at, whether it's gender, man, woman, all of those types of things, we've been focused on a duality of things, but that's not true. It's all one. There's a oneness in everything. It's just the degrees, degrees in which you deal with.
Well, let's get into the Kybalion. Hermes Trismegistus, is that the way you pronounce it?
That's why everybody used the Greek form of Hermes. Because it's going to be Tuatki.
Trismegistus.
Yeah, but that was the
Tri-God. That meant Tri-God.
As we understand it, from as we were saying, we got it from books, and whether it's the Bible or any kind of books, the person who writes it creates what they want you to understand. And sometimes they put in things, sometimes they leave things out, but it's basically what you want to understand, just like the three initiates.
Yeah, I mean, there's no author.
They kind of broke the secrecy to come out and talk about things that secret societies had been practicing since they stole everything out of the Library of Alexandria after they burnt it. And as the story goes, some of the initiates who were able to get some of Hermes' work, they buried it in the sand, and it wasn't all stolen or taken away, and that's where we get these seven principles. Well,
let's go into the Kybalion, Hermetic Philosophy, which comes out of ancient Egypt. And this is a cure-all. I mean, when you start to realize that these were black people.
Well, if you look at Exodus, or Charles and Heston,
Cecil B. DeMille,
you might.
Cleopatra was a black woman.
It wasn't Elizabeth Taylor.
Her name wasn't.
Are the lies that we've been told?
It's kind of funny, not to get off, but Hidden Colors. Are you familiar with the series? There's a part, I think it's in the first one in Hidden Colors, that I think is just. Richard Pryor was always, in my view, he had some trouble, but he was a genius in his own way. And they talk about how Hidden Colors came to be. And Hidden Colors, for those who might not know, is a series of excellent research that talks about things that was hidden. And they say how it developed was Richard Pryor had a scene, and it was not on long because it was a little too deep. But he had a scene where he was a barrier, and these two archaeologists, I guess, they just opened a tomb in Egypt, and they lit the torch, and it lit, and Richard Pryor dropped his bags. He says, "Oh my God, look at this! They look like me. Look at this guy. He looks like my uncle. They did all of this," and he's kept going on, and then you see the guys, they look up, and they look at each other, and then they put their stuff, and they start moving back, and all of a sudden, boom!
Can't let that secret out the box.
It was dark. And that's kind of like, how things have been for a long period of time, because how can I keep you in chains if you were a builder of pyramids?
Once truth is revealed, you can never go back to where you were, unless you willingly choose to. But ignorance has a blinding effect. But when truth is revealed, and part of the problems with racism is that it is a lie. And people, the old word is tell the lie long enough.
That's right.
And they'll believe it's truth.
That's usually what the truth is.
That's what's happening.
So until, and I challenge students all the time, during doing lectures, I said, you need to challenge every professor that stands in front of you.
Right.
Don't be impressed by their degree or the letters and dots behind their name. Why is 1 and 1 2? You don't accept it just because, quote unquote, the professor says it. Because there were professors that said that the world was flat, that said that the earth was the center of the universe, for which Galileo was imprisoned.
And we were 3/5 of a man.
And we were three-fifths of a man. Well, we weren't even human.
That's true.
And
So you have to challenge.
While the European was in the cave, we were building pyramids.
Long before they were in the
All
cave.
right. So, but the Kybalion speaks to secrets in the occult that open up all the doors to all the other religions that exist, all the other secrecy.
And even when you talk about occult, that creates this type of Hollywood concept of magic and scary, which, I mean, magic is not necessarily the occult. Magic is just understanding how to deal with energy.
Chemistry and everything else.
You know, I mean, you know, if I had a flashlight and went back in time, I would, you know, be magic.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, magic is being able to understand certain things. But there are 7 principles. And in those principles, you can find, if you go into it deep enough, an understanding not only of why you're here or how you were able to, or how you can be able to understand where you are at this particular time. And that's incredible because we're talking about things, as the story goes, that was hidden in the sand thousands of years ago and was passed on through word of mouth for thousands of years. It wasn't until 1912. It was 1908, but 1912, I think.
They published this book.
Yeah. That people even, I mean, the masses, even had an understanding of this knowledge that had been suppressed for thousands of years.
Basically, what does the Kybalion explain?
Human existence in this particular world. That's kind of like the best way to deal with it, because we talk about vibration, we talk about polarity, we talk about gender, we have correspondence, mental, which is,
Well,
you
this is the
know,
most important one.
yeah, because everything is mine.
Give us Graham, he's a good orator. Now, these are 7 principles of the Kybalion, just as directly from the book. Just give us a...
The 7 principles which the entire Hermetic philosophy is based are as follows. The principles of mentalism, the principles of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect. Very timely. That was that was the message on Sunday in my church. The principle of gender, number 7.
And the most important one is mentalism.
Mentalism is,
which is on the first one.
Probably the most important one, but not, in my view, the one that people can understand the most, because it has such a broad relationship. Because when you start to talk about mentalism, which is obviously the most important, because as far as it is the sense of all things. Yeah. And the reason why so I don't say that it's not the most important as it relates to its weight. But sometimes when people start, which is why in writing the series I kind of waited until the end. I'm writing a series. You know, because what happens is that the social programming creates a situation. It's almost like the Manchurian candidate. If you see a card, you can go walk into the water. So when you start to talk about there's an all that transcends all things,
God,
then, you know, which God are you talking about? Because, you know, some of the greatest control that has been placed upon the social programming of the masses is that my God is better than yours. And if you don't have a God, there's still something that you have to deal with because you don't have a God. And I always try to simplify it. I have an 11-year-old, and when she was real young, we would talk about, well, what is God, which is always, and I would say things like, well, God is gravity, God is energy. And if you have a Jewish person or a black person or rich or poor or man or woman, and they're on a ledge, if they jump, they're all going to fall. So there's no distinction, to who they are. It's something that's a universal law. And that's God. God is an energy, a vibration, which is the all. Everything vibrates. That was being said before Einstein. Well, Einstein only got the credit because they didn't want, there's a whole other story about that.
Okay.
The theory of relativity was just to justify certain things, but the whole idea as it relates to vibration was developed many, many thousands of years before it became something that we look at now.
Well, that's the easiest one to understand. Everybody understands. I feel your vibes. That energy that every mind sets off. But to create that vibration, you need to give that thought.
And what those people sometimes, and not all the time, sometimes, especially from the religious community, organized religion, which I believe that people have the ability to go the path they need to go to. However, in organized religion, I see that there's a difference between spirituality. Spirituality creates a certain type of an understanding that we're all connected. Sometimes in organized religion, you have a middleman to God. And what crucified Jesus Christ from a Christian point forward was the separation between organized religion and spirituality. Jesus Christ was talking about spirituality, which was the body is the temple of God. And you don't need to be in a church, you don't need to do certain things in order to be connected.
How about you are God?
Even more so.
Having the human experience.
Which is kind of threw us off because they were saying that man is in the image of God. And we saw, So Jesus Christ, he had, blonde hair and blue eyes.
But that depends upon who's portraying the image. And,
but if you're the God, your image is right in the middle.
Well, you can't be the God. You can have God-like characteristics. God's not supreme. God's not all. God, when you look at the word God or think of God, you think of an all being. We are not the all. You are not the all. I am not the all. We are a minute portion
made in the image
of the whole thing. Made in the image. My son is made in my image. Both my sons.
And
but they are not.
them?
They are not me, are they? You see, they have my characteristics.
The DNA.
They have some of my DNA. They have their mother's DNA, but they are not me. Nor is anybody the all of their parent. They're a conglomerate. So we have characteristics, and sometimes those characteristics are very suppressed because of what's going on.
Social programming.
In the social networking that's going on. But yes, from the mind, everything comes out of the mind. It has to be perceived before it can be.
That's the whole concept of mentalism.
So how a man thinks, well, Jesus said, as a man thinks, so is he. So depending upon how we are thinking, it depends upon how it will determine how we're living.
All right? The all is mind. The universe is mental. We're a twinkle in the eye of God. Take it from there.
Well, how I see that is that, and it goes into, again, maybe gender, which is the separation of conscious and subconscious. We all vibrate. This is a scientific. Everything in our universe, whether it's in the 3-dimensional or the 4th-dimensional, vibrates. The concept based on the Hermetic philosophy is that God is a highest form of vibration. Since everything vibrates,
Right.
since everything, there's this concept of, well, where did things come from? The highest form of vibration, which which a lot of times people may look, is unconditional love, and which is part of some of the work that I do. When I was in Korea, as far as the laying of the hands of healing, the concept was, again, which again comes from this Egyptian. It comes from the frequency in which you use in order to heal. We have a technique called Chun Tzu in this Taoist concept that I was taught, and in Korea it's heavenly hands, or it can be considered mother's hands, because the thought pattern is that when you're hurt, and for mother, your grandmother, someone is loved or rubbed it, and it feels better, because the frequency or the vibration of unconditional love allows for a healing form to take place, because we're all connected. You know, and everything, again, as it relates to certain types of concepts, as above, so is below. We're all connected from the atom, and as the protons are circling and orbiting around proton and electrons, is the same as the sun. You know, the same type of rotation. So there's a connection, there's a pattern, and it's based on frequency and vibration. And the whole issue of this concept of spirituality, it means that you've been able to, through whatever the means may be, to raise your frequency to a point to be able to have a greater understanding of the mind of the universe, which deals with is unconditional love. The higher your frequency, the greater you are able to not only heal, but to be able to deal with the matrix, as I call it, in a different way.
How do we program ourselves to take this principle and apply it to our daily lives?
It's called deprogramming.
Wax on, wax off.
Wipe it all out and start with the Kybalion.
I have to apologize, because I'd like to stay, but I have to go.
We should talk again.
Definitely, I want to see you again.
I'll make sure that, Winston...
I've got an appointment I've got to get to.
Put us together.
That healing touch is something that was
the
exercised at
Black
my old
Expo,
church.
which I have to give a plug for, on Saturday I will give a demonstration at the Black Expo, which is going to be at the Hotel Pennsylvania on 34th Street. And I have a wellness clinic.
Because they did healing touch at my old church years ago.
It's
very interesting.
I mean, it has been done. Sometimes it was taken advantage of, but it has been done. And again, sometimes we take advantage of things in the way of the social program. But the fact of the matter is that if you truly believe in the energy of healing, it can happen. Mother Hell proved it when she had people volunteering to hold crack babies.
And they were healed.
Yeah, because they
were healed.
They were dying because they did not have a loving touch. And you don't have to know someone to be able to give a loving touch. That's where unconditional love comes from. But it was great having the opportunity to talk. But again, that's kind of like, it's all about vibration. That's when I talk about, I guess, the what's important, I try to speak to the listener. And sometimes when you get into the combination between spirituality and religion, sometimes you lose lose the listener. But when you talk about vibration, it's
that's
hard.
the easiest one.
But vibration, when you talk about again spirituality, when you talk about God or you talk about the all, it's the highest form of vibration, which is the highest form.
But they claim in here, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
That always takes place.
All right.
Which is, again, I have had a number of opportunities with the Harlem News Group, which is where I write, and I'm doing the series. When I did the review of Chandler's book, Ancient Future by Wayne Chandler, who's, if anyone is interested in all this stuff, Ancient Future is a great piece. When I first read this, that's when I became aware of the 7 Hermetic laws or principles of ancient Egypt. And I wrote about it. But for some reason in meditation, and I got the feeling to write about this again. And the response was so great this time, because I just wrote I picked this up, which is a kind of a pamphlet that doesn't go into it, and I said, okay, let me maybe when you pick things up, everything happens for a reason. I said, let me do a little bit about this.
So you were looking at this, and this showed
No, this was some time ago, but I was at a psychic fair at the state office building.
Oh, wow.
And I was there doing Chansu, and this was about maybe a month and a half ago.
Really? And
I was doing it, and I said, wow. I hadn't seen this since, and I said, let me just pick this up. It was there. It was the only one that was on the table. And I started going through it, and I said, well, I need to rewrite about this again, because some of the things I started looking at it again, and it was kind of simplified, so it broke it down in a sense, not as great as Wayne is really good, but it was to the point where I said, wow, let me talk about this again. And I started writing about it, and the response was so great that I said, well, I'm going to do the series again in the paper. So, I think I'm on the 4th now, or the 5th, and it's on my blog. And it's interesting because the time that I started writing and the things that were happening, the different concepts, whether it's correspondence or polarity or all of those types of things, they're timeless. And different people, when they read things, have a different type of connection to those things. And all things happen when they're supposed to. A lot of times we often say, well, that should have happened, we should have known this. But the idea is that things happen when they're supposed to.
It's one
not
of
before,
the basic
not
principles.
after. Causation. Things, there's a cause and effect in everything, which also goes into the whole instance of rhythm. And rhythm talks about things. Everything has a rhythm to it. You're born, you mature, you die, and then you return.
That's right.
And a lot of people have problems with
Polarity is another
polarity. Polarity is interesting because polarity is part of the whole issue.
Let's read the extracts from the Kybalion. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are half-truths. All paradox may be reconciled. The Kybalion.
Well, it's like the yin and the yang.
Okay. So it's an answer to a philosophy that you've been following all these years.
Right, which is, when you talk about polarity or even gender or dualism, all of those things, if you read, are focused on Taoism. I mean, many others, but the Taoist concept.
Explain Taoist.
Taoist is Taoism, which, depending on who you talk to, but many people, I studied the Korean form. I was trained as a Korean Taoist master. And of course, wherever you are, they are the ones who started this. Right. And from the point of view of the Korean Taoists, some of the elders, is that the Japanese, when they were in charge of, or when they controlled Korea, they took what they learned and developed Buddhism or Zen, and the Chinese, when they were in control, they just took everything and made it, so when most people look at Taoism, they look at it as a Chinese concept, which, you know, even in the writings, you know, was developed, you know, in China. However, if you look at this, the Korean flag, in South Korea, it has 4 to 8 gates and the yin-yang symbol. If you look at the Korean national flag, so they use that as the stake and claim, even though many Koreans aren't always, but they use that to say this is how we relate to, that we were the ones who really had, you know, hold on to this concept of Taoism, which basically means, you've seen the yin yang, it means that all things, first of all, vibrate, again from Hermetic thought, and there is no real dualism. Things are the same, like in the whole issue of the poles. It's just, you know, hot and cold is the same. There's no difference. It's just the frequency of the vibration, the degree of the vibration. And so in Taoism, there are 8 gates, which I'm teaching a course in starting in May at City College, dealing with the 8 gates, and I'm teaching it with a good friend and teacher, Abdul Musawir, who's a grandmaster in Tai Chi, which comes again from this issue of the 8 gates. But you've kind of seen the concept of the 8 gates, which, you know, you've seen these concepts.
Well, that's a little distant for most Americans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How can it relate to the kid on the street here?
Well,
how can you relate all this to the guy on the block?
Well,
or the people that are listening.
It does relate if it's depending upon, again, who is relating it,
or if they're ready for the.
Again, and you know, when
the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Because the whole idea is that we have been socially programmed to believe most 80 to 90% of what you think is right and wrong, good or bad, beautiful or ugly, is based on your social programming. And once you understand that you have been programmed, that can begin your deprogramming to look at things differently.
So we as a race have been programmed.
All races have been programmed. We have been tremendously programmed because of certain types of benefits it has brought from an economic racism.
How do we get to our people that we are the originators? I mean, we're the first humans on the planet. Lucy, 2 million years ago,
Lucy was a typo. It's not something, you know, things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And I no longer believe that you are able to, one, or some leader can change a trend of thought in a way that many people have felt that has happened in the past. I believe that we're moving into a certain type of orbit, because everything happens in cycles. That's the whole issue of pendulum. You know, things, you know, there's nations grow, then the nations, you know, everything happens in that way. I think there's a frequency. Just as we were talking about what happened with Eric Gardner, we were able to see that groups throughout the country and internationally, we just don't always hear about what's happening internationally, started to do certain things based on a certain type of understanding of an issue that came to them and what they needed to do in order to create their displeasure of this situation. That wasn't something that one person was able to get a number of people to organize to do. It happened in a way that how energy sometimes works. There was a study done many years ago, and I don't have the specifics of it, but the generality of it is that monkeys were put they were on an island, and they were taught how to retrieve food in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And after a period of time, the study showed that other islands, monkeys were beginning to do the same thing, which began to talk about how thoughts can be transported, not through our understanding.
The first principle, everything's mental? Mental.
And
so how do we as black people take this concept and grow from it, or learn from it, or deprogram ourselves?
First of all, is to begin to understand that you have to not look for answers on the outside. You have to kind of go to yourself, and because before you can create or love anyone else, you have to understand that whoever you are, no matter what it is, you are okay. There used to be a book, I'm okay, you're okay.
That's right.
Once you begin to understand an appreciation and love for who you are,
that's right,
then you have to begin to understand, which is a little harder to do, is that what you think is what you bring to you.
That's right. That's right.
So if you think that you are helpless, then not only will you be helpless, but you will attract situations in the external world to justify your thought. Because when we talk about our godlike opportunities or the godlike, we have the ability to manifest
anything.
And what you think about the most is what is created into your reality.
That's it.
And if you are believing that you are helpless or you need someone else in order to give you certain types of guidance on all things, then you're missing some of the teachings of the prophets. And you know, all of the various prophets, whether it was Jesus Christ, whether it was Malcolm X later on, but we're going back to some of the beginnings of the religion, as they say, after the flood, after the big flood, you know, whether it was Muhammad, they were all either, and then we go to the Greeks even, they were all put into exile, put to death, or put into prison for the philosophies that they were taken upon those who did that.
Well, do you think as it says in here, don't give pearls to the swine? That's another one.
Well, you know, what that means is that certain people are not
not ready.
There's knowledge that
not ready for
people just are not ready, which is the whole part of this. The whole issue of the Hermetic philosophy is that when we talk about truth, it has many different heads, but the belief from this particular concept is that these 7 principles is the closest, if you really studied them, to understanding the truth about many different things that have always been debated about.
That's right.
As to who we are, what we are.
Well, I've always concentrated on mentalism. I mean, I read this book originally in the 70s. All right, I went to an affair, a psychic fair, back in the 70s.
Interesting.
It's funny that you had said the psychic fair. But they used to have them all the time down at the Sheridan. And I went there one day, and they sent me to this book. There was a warlock shop on 19th Street between 5th and 6th. And they had all the mystery books. I mean, everything was in there. They closed it down since they was passing off too much information. But you have to realize that this book is only available to people that are ready for it.
That's true.
Some of the things that we're saying to you might not be ready to hear it. And but I find it a guiding light for your mental problems.
If you can, you know, there's a concept which, you know, we have in Harlem, we have our Key Center, and one of the things that one of the services, and I kind of change it around. It's kind of a philosophy. It's kind of like a spiritual philosophy.
Yeah. Exactly.
And actually, as a philosophy major at City College, psychology and philosophy were basically the same, and then it's kind of separated when certain types of mindsets changed. But the whole idea is that your philosophical conscious mind is really what guides the subconscious, because the subconscious, you know, you're like the conscious mind is the captain, and the subconscious is like the engineers working the ship. And if you're a captain and you don't know where you're going, you can beach the ship, and no matter how good your engineers are. So the idea is to understand that where you are at this particular point is really based upon how you're thinking.
That's right. That's right.
And if you want to get out of that position, you have the ability to manifest your change just by changing your thought.
You know what we're going to do? I just want to run, say, 2-3 minutes of Eric Garner, the second one, and give the people that normally watch the show a little, we'll take a few minute break here. And this is what you have to do with your mind. You have to pay attention to what's happening around you, and focus on the God that lies within, which I say all the time, the God in me loves the God in you. That's what I mean. There's a God in each and one of all of us. We're all made in the image of God, and these principles sort of guide you in your life's work, which is benefiting you, taking care of the person that's inside here. Like he said, you have to learn to love you inside. You have to look in the mirror and talk to the God that lies within you. All right? So let's go to Eric Gardner, and we'll come right back at you in 2-3 minutes, all right?
Where's the ambulance?
Recording everything.
Where's the ambulance?
Let's go. Back up. Y'all come in. Come on.
You don't have to do it yourself.
Man, can you back up, please? We're trying to give him some air. We're gonna get an ambulance, all right?
Yeah, back up. Y'all got him on the floor. Y'all got him on the floor. Y'all talking about back up. You hear this? Now they're trying to get him an ambulance. After they harassed him, slammed him down, NYPD. You understand? This is going viral right here. It's going viral right here. NYPD harassing people for no reason. He didn't do anything at all. Going viral. Now they want to step back. They want to try to get him an ambulance. After they beat him up, brought him to the ground. Nice try. So going viral. Harassment. Prejudice cops on Staten Island. This is what they do.
Zero down is always available. No worries, no regrets with the limited lifetime powertrain warranty on any purchase. Check out our inventory at bronxcars.com. That's bronxcars.com.
Earn a degree that can mean more money, power, and respect. Ready? Find out now. Saturday, July 19th at Metropolitan College's open house. Call 1-800-33-THINK or visit mcny.edu. That's mcny.edu.
Join us the perfect date movie, Cameron Diaz, Jason Segel in the finest movie of the year.
No, you got this one ain't
Turn it up where hip-hop lives.
Guys, clear the sidewalk. EMS is coming down the sidewalk.
All right. As you said yourself, why didn't somebody save Eric Gardner? But see, now that's the mental state that we're all in. Watching this on video, 3 million people have seen this, and this is injustice here in America. When we talk about freedom and having a black president, but see, something's going to happen. I'm seeing you're all going to come quite aware of power of mentalism. It's going to take our mental concentration to change all this. And we're going to have to work together as a team. I said, made reference to it as many ways of being black as there are black people. But that's a serious point. You have to really think about that. And if we can mentally, gather our thoughts together and change everything, so we all stay sane and not give in to this, the lies that we've been told all our lives, and realize that we are the beginners of the ancestors. We are the ancestors.
And I think the important thing when we talk about mentalism is to understand, and part of the deprogramming that's important is the fact that you are not powerless.
Right.
You have the power to manifest your reality.
Right.
You have the power to create your reality, which a lot of people have been programmed to believe that that's not the case.
Yeah, right.
And which sometimes people may not agree with, but that power comes from understanding the power of unconditional love.
Amen. Amen.
Because that's the greatest, the highest frequency, and if you can start to reach that, it opens the doors for many,
you
so
would
many
remember
other things.
these days when we used to talk about having soul. We had that energy inside in our days in the 50s. I mean, the kids today don't realize what a elegant era that was. I mean, when we had, they talk about today, but back in the day, I mean, we didn't take any guff. I mean, we were it. I mean, wasn't that your experience?
And plus, you had to use your creativity,
right,
and the mindset that will allow for you to be able to understand the whole issue of manifestation.
Right.
We created, I was looking at some of the electronic scooters with these kids, but we had a bottle and a stick and 2 skates, and that was our scooter.
I see it. Thank you for coming. Again, William Rogers, urology?
Urbanology. In the Harlem News.
In the Harlem News.
The Key Energy Center, 13 West 122nd Street.
And again, thank you for coming to the Gilchrist Experience. God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned. God bless.